You could read all the stuff in a long afternoon, but that ain't going to do you any good. It's the implementation assignments where the real work comes in. And that's what we're focusing on, is that balance between giving people new ways of thinking, new ways of looking at work, new practices, but then you've got to give them a structure to go make it work.
Welcome to the Expert in You podcast, the show where we have real conversations with established founders, firm owners, and B2B experts selling their expertise as services. We talk about what's happening now inside experienced businesses where positioning, influence, and growth directly affect opportunities and contracts. I'm Ann Carden. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Expert in You podcast. I'm your host, Ann Carden, and I have a really fantastic guest today. He is world-class. I just can't say enough about him. I have Chris Majer with me today. He is the CEO of HP2, which is Human Potential Project. And Chris has an amazing background, which I'm going to share in just a minute. But Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Glad to be here.
You have quite the resume. I just want to say, when I say world-class, I'm literally, when you hear everything that he has accomplished, you're going to be blown away. So Chris has actually been in leadership for really since the 80s, that long. And not to tell age or anything like that, Chris. But,
that kind of gives it away a little bit, yeah.
He has done some incredible things. I want to talk about your adventures. You've had a lot of adventures, trekking through the Amazon and Africa and Alaska. So you've done a lot of great things like that. But some of the things Chris has done is he has worked with high performance in leadership with the Army Special Forces. He has worked with Olympic and professional athletes, training them, and he's worked with the big companies, maybe even a few small ones that you've heard, like AT&T and the Army and Boeing, Microsoft. Let's see, who are some others that you have worked with here that nobody would recognize, Chris?
There's a whole laundry list of them.
I know, too many to name.
Yeah.
Yes. You can hear the resume here. So he is such an expert, and we're going to have a great conversation around everything he's done and what he is doing in the marketplace today. So again, welcome, Chris. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Thanks.
So tell everyone what you are up to right now, because we heard the resume, all the things you've done all over the world, trained in high performance. What are you doing right now? What is Human Potential Project?
What are we up to these days? Mm-hmm. Well, let's see. Simply stated, as you said, we've been doing this work since the 80s, and it's morphed. We started out working exclusively with athletes, and then with teams, and then with the military, and then we turned our attention to the corporate world. Mm-hmm. And life was great. We were doing gangbusters, doing millions of dollars a year, and then COVID happened. And that pretty well killed the business because everything we did was delivered live. Mm-hmm. So, that
it'll hit a lot of people. Yes.
Yeah, it'll just be a 2-week shutdown. Yeah, no, not so much. Mm-hmm. So while we can sit here and lament the fact that the market's changed dramatically, the fact is it's changed dramatically. Mm-hmm. And we just don't see a demand or a push for the sort of large-scale, in-person cultural transformations that we used to do. And they were marvelously effective. But, if people, that's not what they want, that's not what they want. So what I've done now is we've taken some of our key programmatic elements, stuff that we've proven effective over years and years and years, distilled it into a couple of different online video programs, and we're just literally this week launching them. So that's my focus right now. We want to get these things up and running and get a new customer base going, and we've made some of the work that historically the only way you could get to do our work is if your company paid for it. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, anybody can go and buy one of these programs. So we're going after a little bit of a consumer market and a little insight into our ever so clever marketing strategy. As I said to the guys, look, everybody works somewhere. So if someone wants to buy our program and they're priced at a level where anybody can afford them, then they'll have good success. And then the people working with them will have that little Harry Met Sally experience, ooh, I want what he's having. And we'll spread ourselves, that way. So that's my current focus.
So basically, you've done just a huge shift and a huge pivot in your business. I would love to dive into that a little bit more, because there are a lot of reasons why people make pivots and shifts in their business. For you, it was COVID. There were a lot of people that happened with, and now you're mainly online. Do you let's talk about the structure of your business and how you actually deliver to your clients. So you've created these programs, but you also have people that work under you, right? That will still go into corporations. Do all of that. Do you get out there and speak, Chris, or what is sort of your model?
Yeah. So yes to all that. Yes, we have people go out and do programs. Back in the glory days, as I say, our flagship program, and maybe I better give you a little or give your audience a little context, otherwise this won't make any sense. One of the things that separates us out is we take a non-traditional or non-commonsensical approach to learning. All right. So in the current view, learning is seen as the acquisition of theories, models, beliefs, ideas, all for the sake of gaining understanding, because to understand is to know, and that's the Holy Grail. And as we explain to people, well, that might be true in a collegiate or academic atmosphere, but frankly, nowhere else. We're not from the HR department. We come from the world of performance. And in that world, nobody really cares what you understand. It's what can you do? That's the part that matters. Now, everybody smiles and goes, oh, yeah, we got that. And I said, okay, so let's keep following this. So our product is what we call embodied competence. Embodied means you can take some new action without having to stop, think about it, look it up in some book. And competence is simply the capacity to consistently produce the desired result. Good. Everybody's still nodding up and down, right? Okay. I said, now, while your mind understands, and understanding can, in fact, occur in an instant, in the end, it's your body that learns. Your mind understands, but it's your body that learns, and the body only learns one way, and that's through practice. No amount of understanding ever produced competence in anything. Only practice does. And here's the part nobody likes, and practice takes time. So in the old days, we had a flagship cultural shift program, lasted for 9 months, right? So people would work and we'd use their real work as the means to implement new practices and so forth and so on. So now when we're doing video programs, again, they've been distilled and they're not quite as broad-based as our flagship programs, but they run for 2 or 3 months. Right? It takes you that long to get through the work. You could read all the stuff in a long afternoon, but that ain't going to do you any good. It's the implementation assignments where the real work comes in. And that's what we're focusing on, is that balance between giving people new ways of thinking, new ways of looking at work, new practices, but then you've got to give them a structure to go make it work. Because like anything else, the biggest problem facing human beings, adult human beings, is we're too invested in looking cool. We want to look good. So the critical first step in being a learner is you got to be willing to be a beginner. That's the stage that no grown-ups like, because as a beginner, it's where you're not cool. It's where you make all the goofy mistakes and you look dumb. It's like, I'm a beginning tennis player. My serve looks more like batting practice, in baseball, Oh, it's up and over the 400-foot fence, just a little outside. And, we don't like to do that. So this then segues into a different conversation. I'll stop now, but if you're interested, we can talk about the phenomenon of coaching in this whole process as well. So.
Yeah, and I would love to talk about that, because as we know, when you're talking about just like online courses or online videos and things like that, they're not transformational. They don't really transform people, right? We know there has to anymore, because information is out there. There's no shortage of information. Yeah, right. But like you said, you have to do it. You have to practice it. And that is what perfects it. How are you basically doing that within your business so that there is stickiness, so that there is transformation for the people that are using your materials?
Well, we've got two options. If you get one of the online courses, as I said, that comes with the bulk of the work is the implementation assignments, and they're designed to be a little step by step that you do. So it will say, for example, for the next 3 days, do this, right, and then pay attention to this, and then we do some work on what we call the enemies of learning. Because we're all infested with these enemies of learning, and they're the worst kind of enemies because they're the ones that have outposts in your head. Right. So these are the little conversations that go on. Like,
Right.
I don't like this. It's too hard. What are they doing? I don't agree with that. This is uncomfortable. Make the bad man stop. That's what your mind does because it doesn't like to change.
Right.
Our
Likes that comfort zone for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Our axiom is real simple. Everyone's all in favor of change as long as it doesn't mean me and it doesn't mean now. Other than that, it's a great idea. You guys should get right on it. But you just hit it. We like to stay in our comfort zone. No learning happens in the comfort zone.
Right.
So one of the critical elements is, so we set up this implementation structure. Then we also give people, if you're really serious, a coaching option. You can also get some coaching. And we take, as is the case with most everything, a non-traditional approach to the phenomenon of coaching. We came out of a world where real coaching took place. In my opinion, we've got too many people claiming to be coaches that don't know much about it. It's not being a paid friend. It's not just a fancy way of dispensing advice. It's not therapy with a different blanket wrapped around it. Coaching is a unique type of relationship where the end goal is to transform the performance of the player. Right? And it is unique in that, unlike teaching or leading or managing, which I can do to you whether you like it or not, coaching can only take place in the presence of the demand for it. I can't coach you if you don't want to be coached.
Right.
Okay. So the coach's job is to be a different observer of the player than the player is of themselves. That's why none of us, this whole notion, I'm going to teach myself how to do something, is complete crap. Right? You need to get somebody who's competent in an area where you're not. Okay.
Right.
So the coach's job is to build. It's a interesting two-edged trust relationship. You as the coachee, not a real good word, but you know what we're talking about.
Right.
Have to trust me, the coach, that I'm competent and can do what I say I can do. And I have to trust you that you're going to do the work that I give you to do, and not just kind of sit there and go, oh, I was busy, or, and so this isn't working, that kind of stuff. So it's a dynamic that has to get built. It takes a little time to build that relationship. But then the coach takes someone through what we call the authentic learning process. And the first thing is being a beginner. A beginner is a person who makes all three of these declarations. I see there's some domain in which I am not competent, and I'm committed to learn. I'm not going to pretend that I know when I don't. I'm actually going to get serious here. Number two, I'm going to authorize someone to coach me. As I said earlier, I'm not going to fall into I'll just teach myself how to do this. And three, and this is the hard part that we touched on earlier, I'm going to be at peace with being a beginner. Again, this is the awkward, cross your ski tips, fall on your face. The golf ball does things that physicists say are impossible. I can make a round object make a 90-degree turn. It's amazing to watch. And that's how we work. And everybody likes to think, well, in business, it's different. No, it's not. You want to learn new leadership skills? Reading about them will not do you any good.
Not going to do it.
No, you need to practice, right? Same thing with management practices. We introduce a whole new approach to the phenomenon of management. As I said, you can read the book in a long afternoon, but it isn't going to do you a whole lot of good. You'll be real entertaining / annoying at cocktail parties, but
I don't know a lot of people that have been transformed by a book.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so good and it's so true. I was just curious too, like how you built that accountability and you got people to really. Again, we are talking about trying to make a transformation in someone's life or in their business or whoever it is you're working with. So when we look at what is your role right now in the company, Chris, what do you actually do? I know you have a team under you. You have other coaches. What is your role?
Well, I work on program design. So like I just got through shooting a whole bunch of videos and creating workbooks and that kind of stuff. And while I like that, my actual real joy is going out and working with people. Over the history of our company, at one point I found myself at 150 people in the organization. I'm sitting in my office one day down in right just north of the Pike Place Market in Seattle. I had every guy's dream. I had the corner office. I'm sitting, 2 blocks with an unobstructed view across Puget Sound. I can see the Olympic Mountains, and I'm hating it because I'm sitting here playing office. I didn't get into the business to worry about 401ks and policies and all that kind of stuff. I'm going, oh, somebody please just shoot me now. So we downsized. I said, look, I'm quite happy being a boutique. Right now, that doesn't mean I have to have some explicit number of people, but as long as I can keep my hands in doing what I really like doing, working with people, inventing new ways to produce transformation, I'm happy. So that's what I focus on.
It's your calling.
Yeah, I delegate, the administrative stuff to people who are passionate about that. I'm just not one of them, but they're great. You can't have an organization without them. So God bless them.
So if you think about your business in the past and your business now, what's different in your role other than you're kind of the creative? You said you're shooting videos and things like that. What are some other changes that you've made that maybe just don't really light you up that much?
Well,
because coming online is a whole different world.
Yeah, it's a different world. Many years ago, I learned a hard and expensive lesson. When the company was first in its early formative years, I had a team of about 20, 25, and many of them were older than me. I was a young guy when I kind of fell into this, and I had all of my management team, in fact, were older than me, and I had this belief that if I was going to be their leader, I had to be, as good, if not better, at everything, than they were. And for a few years, I was our leading salesperson, best program designer, got the best reviews from all the clients, blah, 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 blah. I also got burned out, cost me a marriage. And I realized that if I keep holding on to this notion that I've got to be the best at everything, that's going to limit our capacity to grow.
Right.
Because I wasn't arrogant enough to think that I was the smartest guy in the world about all this stuff. So I just had to let go of that notion and trust that I'm smart enough at least to hire people who I know are better at sales, who are better at accounting, who are better at logistics, whatever it is, than I am. So my role is basically learning to step back and be comfortable conducting the orchestra of competent players. My job is to find the competent players and to manage their mood. That's the critical thing.
Yeah. You talk about that too. We'll talk about that in a minute. I want to dive into that. But no, I like you said, you learned this 25 years ago. I know people in business that still haven't learned that you're not the end all be all, right? We can't, we're always going to hit a ceiling if we operate that way. You can't go very far. What's the saying? You can go further with others than I don't remember the exact saying, but you can go much further with other people. And that's in a lot of different ways you could use that, but that's so true. So if you look at, you've had some amazing results. First of all, I remember a story that you were telling me when we were talking about the podcast and what we were going to talk about on the show. And you shared some results with me. And I just really want to bring these up because this shows the world-class person that you are and what you really have accomplished. And you shared that at one time you worked with an organization, training their teams and coaching their teams that turned into a $650 million. Correct me if I'm off on that, but it turned into a $650 million boost in their revenue from the work that you were doing. Would you talk about that just a little bit?
Well, yeah, because the challenge here is we've got a lot of stories like that.
I know you do.
And people find them hard to believe, but I can explain how we do it. So let's go back to the beginning. What set all this in motion was the work we did with the military, where we realized that doing stuff in the classroom wasn't doing them any good. So we had this mind-body team approach to everything. and we brought that into the corporate world. And my very first corporate client, right, we put together what we thought was this great corporate program. We needed some place to try it. And I had an early investor, and his partner owned this somewhere between factory and industrial machine shop over in Shelton, Washington. You've never heard of Shelton, Washington. It's on the far side of Puget Sound. If you go another 40 miles west, you're in the Pacific Ocean. And much of that 40 miles is the Olympic mountain range. There's just nothing out there. Okay? So this was 300 people in the shop where they would take these 4 foot by 8 foot, 8 to 10 inch thick ingots of aluminum, run them through these industrial milling machines and make doors for Boeing airplanes. Now, according to the managers at the plant, place was maxed out. Couldn't possibly produce anymore because all their statistical models and yada, 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 yada. But, we have some communication problems and some stuff that we could probably use a little help on. So we took all 300 people in batches of 100 through our initial 3-day program. Not all at the same time, of course, and did our thing. 6 weeks later, productivity was up 20%, supposedly impossible. And we were all excited and getting ready to kind of do some long-term stuff. The guy who owned it, being no fool, and the consummate entrepreneur, said, "This thing's never going to be worth anything more than it is right now," so he sold it. So we didn't get a chance to do it long. My second client was AT&T.
Oh, wow.
So I went from business obscuria. My thought was, we're going to try this in Shelton, Washington. If it doesn't work here, nobody's ever going to know. And if it works, great. So it worked. Next thing I know, I'm at AT&T headquarters in New Jersey.
How did you get them? How did that happen?
Well, let's see. How can I explain this quickly? In our early days, all I can say about it is Providence smiled on us. Okay. When we were doing work with the military, I'll tell you the story as fast as I can because it's pretty entertaining. So back in the 80s, there was a magazine, you may or may not remember it, called Omni. Yeah. And it had it was a real cool magazine. It had these silver pages in the middle that had little short stories in them. And somebody clipped one out and sent it to me because it was about this guy in the Army, this Lieutenant Colonel Jim Channon, who had invented this hypothetical mythical Army unit called the 1st Earth Battalion. And it was kind of like a combination of Peace Corps, Vista, Special Forces. And I thought, this is cool. And then they sent it to me because all the stuff that this guy talked about is what we were doing, these kind of, futuristic training things. And I'm saying, it's not the future. We're doing this stuff right now. So I got all excited. I want to talk to this guy. Well, what do I know? How do I find this guy? Well, simple. You pick up the phone and I called the Pentagon. Okay. What did I know? I'm looking for this Lieutenant Colonel Chan. What service is the Army? Let me get you the Army. Department of the Army. Okay, let me get you the locator. So we go through this entire process. Okay, Lieutenant Colonel Channon is at, drum roll please, Fort Lewis, Washington. He could have been any place on the planet. He's 30 minutes south.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I repeat the process at Fort Lewis. Colonel Channon, guy answers the phone. Second 588. This is Sergeant Schmedlap. How can I help you, sir? I'd like to speak to Lieutenant Colonel Channon. Let me see if I can catch him. So the phone bangs on the desk and you hear the chair push back and footsteps disappear and door slams and gravel crunches. And then the whole thing comes back double. This was his last day in the Army. He had packed up all of his stuff, was loading up his car. If this had taken 10 seconds longer, I would have missed him.
Never reached him.
Never reached him.
Wow.
So I got this guy on the phone and we get to talking, and he's the one who got me to go down to Fort Hood and introduced us to, the Army down there. And that's a whole other, providential. There's a good providential.
I know you have a lot of stories.
Yes. So we're launching our corporate stuff, and Channon out of the blue calls me up and says, "Hey, look, the people at AT&T read about a bunch of the stuff that I've been doing, and they asked me for a recommendation on who might help them with this transformational problem they had, and I recommended you guys."
Nice.
So we get to talk to AT&T. Now, I remember in the 80s, divestiture. They broke up the phone company. So This is the consumer consumer products division. Prior to divestiture, there was 40,000 people in this one division, losing $220 million a year. They had 200 or 300 phone stores around the country, 35 business offices, hemorrhaging cash. So the board says to them, you got to get this turned around, right? We'll give you 18 months. If you can't get it turned around, we'll just shut it down and do retail through Sears or something. So what do? Well, like every big establishment company, they call McKinsey. So McKinsey comes in and McKinsey'd the hell out of them. They took the headcount from 40,000 to 16,000 in 9 months. Try and get your head around that. And are quite proud of themselves because their mandate was to stop the financial hemorrhaging, which they did. Right. And they were completely oblivious to the fact that they'd stopped everything else.
Right.
It's like the arrogant doctor crowing, the patient's quit bleeding. Well, it's because he's dead, you half-wit. Legendary stuff here. We don't have time for all this. The short of it is they had a big meeting to figure out what do we do now. And the youngest person in the room, a 24-year-old woman who had one person reporting to her, so technically she's a manager in a room full of 100 managers in this division, jumps up from the back of the room because she's tired of these send your cards to the middle and up, and we vet them. And she's like, come on, you guys, what's it going to take to turn this thing around? The divisional president, Ken Bertuccini, known to be a little, fiery, shakes the podium and mutters under his breath, pardon me, because I'm going to quote him, it's going to take a fucking miracle. So, in the dead silence, the heads all whip back, whiplash. We're not sure what's more shocking. Ken told the truth or he said a bad word. We need a miracle. And that was the mandate that we were given. They interviewed 25 firms, chose us with all of our vast corporate experience to do this Project Miracles. You remember Mike and the Mechanics song, All I Need is a Miracle? That was our theme. That was our theme song. So
that's really taking me back.
That's right. We're in the Wayback Machine here now. We put, I think it was about 6,000 managers through this intensive and some follow-up work over the next 48 months. They went from break even to generating $3 billion in profit for AT&T.
Wow, that's amazing.
They invested a whopping, $3 million in us and got that kind of a return. All right. That's the world that we played in. The one you were referring to was Allianz Life, right? Life insurance company. They were a merger of two companies. Their young CEO was smart enough to go, we're growing at 20% year over year. Anybody else would go, what did you possibly need any help with? Because he was smart enough to go, because the wheels are going to come off. We can't keep
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
we can't keep this up. We're growing. We're kind of rolling out of control here. So we put pretty much everybody in the company, which was a little less than 2,000 people, in different levels of the cascading length of this program. They spent $10 million on us. And in some big meeting, this activist gets up, what's the big idea? Spending all this $10 million on this touchy-feely HP2 stuff. And Mark says, yeah, we did. We spent $10 million on HP2, Human Potential Project, and documented a $650 million return. Any more questions? Mic drop. So I can go on for hours with this kind of stuff. My big problem nowadays is when I tell people about this stuff, despite the fact that I have video testimonials and case studies, people don't believe it because they've never seen anything like it. Since they can't imagine that it's possible, so that must mean it's impossible, as opposed to maybe there's something I don't see or know.
Yeah. So with your method, give us kind of just a breakdown of the process or the method that you really do. If you had to break down HP2, explain that.
Well, we have a couple foundational pieces. I already talked to you about one of them, learning. We take a different approach to learning. So we start every one of our programs, even these online programs, start with, let's get clear about what learning means and what it's going to take. So you know what you're getting yourself into, right? This isn't going to be your normal, read the book and life will be happy. No, you got to do work. When we do live programs, as I explained to people from day one, we're not from the HR department. This is not some brown bag over lunch BS. You're going to have to do some real work. You need to get engaged. And in big corporate programs, we would explain to them, and we'd work this out with the executives first, we reserve the right to kick people out of the program. The company's investing some serious money in you, and if you're not doing the work, we're not going to take their money. We'll give you the boot. And they're kind of, whoa, that's never happened before. And in some cases,
and it wouldn't look good for them, would it?
Yeah, it's not a career enhancer. Let's be real clear.
Right.
It's not a career enhancer.
Yeah.
And in some cases, with some companies, they had to apply to get into the program. And we would set it up that way. So the first few batches of people, they had to apply to get in. So when they got done and were just raving, then we could drop that because now you couldn't keep them out of the program. So I said, this is not an HR offer. So we do some work on learning. And then, as I say, we work on teams, self, team, and business. We go in that progression. So first thing, we're going to do some work on you. You can't change the organization without changing the people.
Right.
So we lay down a set of what we call universal performance principles. There's nothing new conceptually here, but it's the implementation. So they learn about, wake up. What does it mean to be aware? What if you really understand that you always have a choice? You have a choice about everything, not just some things, but everything. The real issue you're facing in life is not your ability, it's your willingness. We like to pass it off as, I can't. No, it's just I choose not to. Take ownership for it. Then we make the distinction between accountability and responsibility, two different things. And people really get what it is to be accountable for things, what it is to be committed. Then we work on trust, honesty, and integrity. So you lay down this foundation. And then we start working on, what does it really mean to be on a team? It isn't about just having the same shirt and the same logo on your business card. There's a set of commitments that teams share. And once you understand that, your job as a team leader is not to manage activities. That's industrial era thinking. It's to manage the network of commitments. And then, as you kind of touched earlier, part of our magic is we teach people about the phenomenon of moods, right? And our axiom here is mood is everything.
That's right. I said we were going to dive into that a little bit.
It's not the only thing, but it's everything. Because if you don't get that right, nothing else you do is going to matter. And I got all kinds of charts and graphs and show them what I'm talking about. But for your audience, simply stated, a mood is a predisposition for action. Right? That's what it is. It's not a synonym for emotions. Those are two different phenomena. Right?
Do you equate mood with like energy?
They bring an energy. Moods have a different kind of energy. So positive, or what we call generative moods, are things like ambition, confidence, trust, esprit. Degenerative or negative moods are distrust, resentment, resignation, arrogance, cynicism, entitlement. And as we explain to people, in a high-performing organization, no one's entitled to be in an unproductive mood.
Right.
That's You're a professional. You get paid to be in a positive, generative mood. Right? You need to leave that stinky stuff home.
And people forget that, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like we do all this work with sports teams, and everybody goes, it's the coach's job, and it's not the coach's job to motivate you.
Right.
You're getting paid hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. If that's not enough motivation, go do something else. His job is to occasionally inspire you, because that's what, speaking of energy, but it's not his job to motivate you.
Right.
So we work on that. And then after we kind of get all that down, then the real fun begins as we start introducing a whole new set of leadership and management practices. And that work unfolds over time. Now, the way we work, and here's kind of, I can tell you the secret because it's easy to see, but not so hard, or not so easy to do. What makes our work so successful is if you can make up a number, give me 100, 200 people, I don't care.
200 people.
Before we get in the room, we've worked with the senior managers and we say, okay, we're going to start this program. You're going to give us 200 people. You guys, I want you to sort that 200 into little groups, little teams of 5 or 6, no more than 6. Okay. And then you're going to give each team a project. Now, so you don't create chaos in the organization. These don't have to be new projects. They can be things that are going, and they don't have to be separate. They can be subsets of a bigger initiative, right? Initiatives get broken into different projects. And the project has to meet 3 conditions of satisfaction. 1, it's critical to the success of the business, not some make work BS. 2, it has to have a measurable financial impact. So it's either going to generate new revenue or drive some cost out of the business. And there we have to be clear. When I say drive new cost, I mean drive it out of the business, not over to somebody else's.
Right. Which
Right.
happens a lot in corporations.
Exactly.
Yes.
And number three, it has to be complex enough that you think it's going to take about a year to get done.
Mm-hmm.
And our promise is, using the methodology we're going to teach, you will either get more value than you anticipate, or you'll get it done faster. Right? And that's how we fulfill the big financial promise we make, which is that when you invest in our, the full-blown program, you'll get back at least 10 times what you invest in the program inside the time frame of the engagement, not at some distant point in the future, before we're done. And if we don't do that, we keep working until you do. We've never had to spend an extra day on a
That's
project.
great positioning. Yeah.
Yeah. So examples, I've given you some examples, but Columbia House, we all know Columbia House. 6 CDs for $1. And, remember when you were in college, everybody had their Columbia House, you get to, right?
Right.
And it was astonishing to me. They could find you even when the IRS couldn't. It was amazing, You're moving into your new apartment. The mailman comes up and goes, "Oh, here you go. Here's your Barry Manilow's greatest hits." And you're like, "Oh, okay." And so they're doing great. They're $1 billion a year company, for heaven's sakes. BlackRock buys them. They send in their Golden Boy CEO, and everything goes to crap. Not because of him, but the world changed right under his feet.
Right.
So imagine, if you would, day one, it's $1 billion a year company. 1 quarter later, it's a $600 million a year company. Ooh, what happened? Napster. Oh, a revolution is happening. Free downloadable music. Why should I pay for it when I can get it for free? So they did the usual downsizing, right sizing, etc. And they paid Bain a lot of money, who came back and told them they should get in the video business. I said, "Did you not see what just happened here with music? You don't think,
Right.
oh no, that'll never be downloadable." Oh yeah, okay. So anyway, we said, okay, look, let's take this on. So they gave us a team. We did the same thing. Put them into teams. One team's job was, we need to launch a new business unit. Okay, good. Have you done this before? Yeah. What's your best time concept to launch? 18 months. That's my benchmark? Yes. Using our methods, they went from concept to launch in 7 months.
Wow.
So they
That's
saved
amazing.
11 months of burn on the internal and consulting team.
Look at the
and
cost
got
savings.
11 months of early revenue. That one
Right.
project more than covered the costs, the price of our engagement. The other 9 were gravy. So the key to it is, you get these teams working together. They produce their own little subcultures. Each team has one of our coaches assigned to it. They have team meetings, and then we have big group meetings, every 6 to 8 weeks. And you put in place the process builds on itself, so they get new practices, time to work them, what's working, what's not working. And by the time you get done with this, these people don't recognize themselves in terms of who they become and their skill set.
That's amazing.
It is.
The nice thing about people doing what you do, like inside of corporations, is you're getting paid to learn, to grow, to become a better person. It's so valuable for people that get to take advantage of that.
Well, it's funny you say that. I get embarrassed about some of the things that they've written to us, and thanks and so. But my favorite one was in this same Columbia House project. This guy gets up after we're all done. He goes, "I just wish I'd met you guys, a couple years earlier. I wouldn't have spent all that money on an MBA." He said, "No, really, you taught me more about how to really manage than I got in school." And not to say he's right, but the point is, I think we talked about this, in our other conversation. We're in a interesting historical moment, and I don't think enough people are paying attention, right? So setting aside all of the political madness of the moment, what I'm talking about is a historical, epical shift in the nature of business, right?
Yeah.
So everything that we think of as modern management practices were, for the most part, invented by people who were born in the 1800s. Right? They were designed to be effective for Henry Ford and his peers as they ushered in the era of mass production. Right? And in those days, the workforce was unskilled, uneducated. There was no social safety net. And the challenge they were trying to solve was simple. How do we take unskilled, uneducated, unsophisticated day laborers and farm workers and turn them into productive factory workers?
Right.
Solution was simple. De-skill the work. You might have been a person who made, beautiful leather work on saddles. Well, we don't have big demand for that. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to put 5 bolts on a Model T wheel all day, every day. Yeah, it's mind numbing, but anybody can do the job, and that's what we want. So if you're going to be a problem, or if you don't like it, that's fine. We got 100 people in line waiting to have your job. Right? So the management systems were simple: input, output, throughput. And because they didn't trust the workforce, people don't really want to be here, understandably, we can use the carrot and the stick. If you didn't work, you didn't eat.
Right.
Flash forward 100 and some years. That industrial era is over.
Right.
Not to say it's not valuable. It's not the driving force in the economy.
We're in a new time.
Well, everybody thinks it's the knowledge. It's not knowledge. And it's like we said, knowledge is the booby prize. It's the coordination era. We've entered the coordination era. And the value generators in today's workforce are what we have called coordination workers. They don't make things per se, right? But they generate value out of their effective capacity to coordinate with each other to produce customer satisfaction, whether that customer is internal or external. That requires a completely different approach to management. The workforce of today is educated. They are sophisticated. On top of that, they're agile and they're mobile. They don't have to stick around, right? So they don't respond well to management as supervision, right? And that's what management has always historically been. Doesn't work that way anymore. So we have a whole different set of practices that we won't go into now that we teach people over time, and that's to enable the effective coordination of your workforce to take care of customers.
Yeah, the fact that you've been doing this since the 80s is a little bit mind-blowing to me, because I've only been in the advisory services. Before that I had businesses, and so I've been doing advisory services for about 15 years. I didn't really know a lot of people that did what you did, back in the day. And so the fact that you've been doing it that long, it is just, it is a little bit mind blowing. But how are you bringing that into what we are doing right now in the marketplace? That had to be such a shift for you too, because you probably didn't have a lot of competition back then. And now everybody is doing leadership. Everybody. I mean, and I know we're in that world, so we see it more obviously, but how do you overcome that? Having the brilliance that you have and the results that you've had, and how are you actually setting yourself apart and overcoming that challenge?
Yeah, we've been at this, since the 80s, and it blows your mind. Imagine what it does to me.
True.
It's the quintessential challenge, frankly. It's something we have to contend with every day. Back in the day, there wasn't a lot of competition. It's true. Today, it's not so much competition in the market as noise. There's a lot of noise. Right? There's a lot of people who claim to do stuff. I took a weekend seminar, so I'm a coach. Oh, just go shut up, right?
Right.
Yeah. And you get a lot of that. So in every market, there's the local business professor who's great in the classroom and really doesn't understand what's going on out here. The biggest challenge we have, frankly, is cutting through the noise. And I've watched it now for 40 years. I keep thinking someday everybody's going to wake up, but they haven't. So, to get a reasonable, workable client, we fight through this big bucket of people. Oh, we're doing so great. Everything's great. We're wonderful. We're too busy. We don't need any help. Everything's great. Come back in 6 months or whatever. Then you have the other bucket. Oh no, the sky is falling. We can't possibly afford to spend any money on this sort of stuff, despite when I show them the financial returns that we get. It's like, oh, you're quite farsighted, aren't you? And then somewhere in that little tiny middle, there's the guy who's, like my CEO at Allianz, good old Mark Zesba. Yeah, things are going great, but it's not sustainable. This is what I know about our culture. It's not sustainable, right? Yeah, things are bad, but we know it's going to turn around. And maybe if we did something, we can turn around faster instead of waiting for it to really hit the rocks. Those guys are few and far between. In my opinion, we've kind of gutted the leadership class in our businesses today. We've got way too many companies that are being steered by accountants who don't really understand, what it is that drives those numbers. They want to look at life on a spreadsheet, and that just is not the way to do it.
That's so true. And it's so true. And even as I was advising businesses, a lot of times I would come up against people that were doing the numbers, and they would be like, why do you need this person, helping you or whatever? And I'm like, to have to combat that with an accountant or a CPA, because again, they're looking at the cost.
Right.
My clients are looking at the investment. Big difference. But to have to defend that. So I totally get what you're saying. And people a lot of times make the wrong decisions off of things like that. Nothing against accountants and CPAs.
We need accountants to crunch numbers, not to make strategic decisions. That's the difference. So
that's right. And there are parts in a business that are required that you don't necessarily, you can put a number on it over time, and you can see the results of that, but you can't necessarily make a decision based on that.
You remember Circuit City?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Company's
Absolutely.
gone. Yeah. Their private equity partners, the finance guys there, killed it. So Circuit City, you know who they were, electronics, business is booming, the private equity firm bought them. And they're looking at the numbers, and they said, wow, look at this. We got this slice of our salespeople that we're paying a lot of money to. Why don't we get some, less expensive salespeople? Well, okay. So they whacked the top 10% of the sales force 8 weeks before Christmas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's how smart these guys are. 8 weeks before Christmas.
It reminds me of one of my very first clients. I remember when I was working with him, and I said, well, what kind of training do you actually do for your employees? So, because he was talking about the turnover and how much turnover there was, and they were struggling a bit, and I was trying to turn them around. And I said, what is your training program, and what do you do to really build these people up and help them be valuable in the business? And he said, we don't really do that. And I said, why is that? And he said, well, because what if they leave? And I said, what if they stay?
What if they leave? They're certain to leave. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense. And so to think like that, but it's amazing a lot of times how that is the thought process.
Oh, it is. It's just absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. So
I did a lot of investing in my employees when I was running businesses and building businesses. And many of them were able, some of them were able to even go off and have their own business because of the training and what they were able to get. But it was just part of it. It still meant they did a great job. They did a better job for me while I had them. And people just undervalue that so much.
Well, that's all true. And part of the problem, I don't want to get off in the weeds here, is, we leave that too often up to the HR people. And they don't, for the most part, have the cojones, certainly not the budget, to stand up to the numbers guys and go, no, we need to do this. Doesn't matter if you like it or agree with it, or even if you can't pinpoint an ROI. The analogy that I used to use when we talk to new clients, because, unfortunately, still, but mostly in the older days, all of the would-be clients and executives were men. So I'd go in there and I'd say, okay, guys, you're all agitated because you think, you might want to, you're spending too much money. So what's your favorite football team? Pick one. Okay.
The Seahawks, right?
The Seahawks. Well, they won't work for this particular example.
Well, he's in Seattle, so I
yes, because I'm in Seattle. But it's not only that, but they just won the Super Bowl. That's kind of
right. I know. I had to say that. I told you, Chiefs were out. Seahawks were in. Right.
All right. So the Minnesota Vikings. I just we'll pick on the Vikings. All right. So imagine, if you will, it's the last game of the season. You just lost the game. All right. So the season's it's ended. So the team's in the locker room, and the owner comes in. I don't know who owns the Vikings. He says, Mr. Smith, whatever, walks in and says, okay, guys, listen up. I know you played your hearts out today. It was a great game. needless to say, we didn't turn out the way we wanted to. And while that's too bad, it's just the way that it is. But here's our problem. All of our projections were based on making the playoffs and getting deep into the playoffs. That didn't happen. So we're not going to get all that revenue. Now, what that means is we can't afford training camp next year. So what I want you to do is go out on your own, really work out in the off season. We're going to have a draft, so we'll get some new players. So take them out drinking, play golf, have pizza with them, really bring them in to the culture. Show up in time for the first preseason game next year. And then if we do better next year, we'll be able to afford training camp, the following fall. That conversation will take place absolutely never in the National Football League, right? But it happens on a daily basis in corporate America. Now, part of the problem is short-sighted thinking, true, but a big part of the problem is because most of the stuff that's offered through the HR department doesn't work because they're still trying to dispense information instead of build competence.
Right. And in all fairness, too, they don't have the time. They are typically so overwhelmed with inside of a corporation, the HR people. They have so many things on their plate.
Yeah.
And so they're checking a box like,
that's exactly right.
And they're checking a box, but it doesn't mean it transforms anything. And it's
doesn't
not
transform anything. You get the box checked off, but you haven't really made an impact. And that just diminishes their identity in the rest of the organization. So when I go and say, we're gonna do this program, produce big transformation, and you probably should set aside $10 million. I don't even talk to the HR department.
Right.
I talked to the senior executives. I said, I know I will coordinate with them if needs be, but they're not my customer.
Right.
CEO's my customer. I report to you. I will give my updates and project status to you, period.
Yeah. No, that's so good. And one other thing you said that I just want to kind of hit on is you said they're not my customer. And this is a big problem with people that are trying to sell to corporations. They're trying to sell through HR or to HR. And that's why they end up with very small fees, very small contracts that don't go anywhere. And it doesn't even get to the people that really could use their help. And so just an FYI for people listening to this, know who your buyer is and make sure you're getting to the buyer. That will change everything in your business.
Hear, hear. What she said.
I love the football story. I think that's amazing. If you're speaking on a stage, I hope you share that because that's such great positioning for what it is you do. And it makes so much sense. So, Chris, what haven't we covered that you want to make sure you get into this conversation? And then we'll wrap it up. This has been amazing.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I think we kind of covered all the highlights. I can say, if people are interested, I'm going to send you, some links for these new online programs once they're up and functioning. And, you can please feel free to share them with everybody. You can go check us out at humanpotentialproject.com or my speaking site's chrismajer.com.
And we'll put all those links in the show notes as well.
And you go on Amazon. I wrote a book some years ago, The Power to Transform, which really dives into some of the stuff I was telling you about how the program unfolds. Right? There's much more elements than we had time to go into here, and that'll give people a little deeper dive into at least the personal transformative.
I love it. Yeah. And you're really getting all the backstory and all the background he has had. Again, I just want to say this again. You've trained special forces. You've trained high-level companies and organizations. You didn't just read a book or buy a program and go out and do this. There is a real difference. There's a real difference in true expertise that's been proven. And, there are stories to go with that. And people that just decided they want to get into leadership and changing organizations. I know there are a lot of good people out there, but they're just like you. Not everyone is an expert. So Chris is, I want to sing his praises. He's amazing. I just couldn't, when he was telling me all the stories, it was just, again, it was just a wow, the things you've done. So this has been fun, Chris. Thank you so much. And such an honor to have you on. And I really thank you for being my guest today.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I hope it was useful for your audience. Happy to come back and play with you some more. So
there we go. All right.
All right.
You heard it. You heard it. He'll be back. Thank you again. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. Make sure you subscribe to the show if you haven't done that, and make sure you share it. I want to get people like Chris in front of the people that need to see him and know about him, and get these experts out into the world. And if you need help building your business into a more premium market, really moving up market, getting seen and paid the way you deserve for all of your expertise, then reach out to me at acarden.com, because that is exactly what I help you do. I help you elevate your business so that you are getting the high-end clients. You are building wealth from your business, but you don't have to work with a million clients to do it. So have an amazing day, everyone. God bless you. Go rock your business. Bye-bye. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Although I share strategies, ideas, and success stories based on real experiences, results are never guaranteed. Every business is unique, and outcomes depend on individual effort, market conditions, and many other factors. By listening, you agree that I and my guests are not responsible for your results or actions based on the content shared. Thank you for tuning in today. If you're as excited as I am about scaling up your influence, business, and bank account, then I have just the thing for you. But first, make sure you subscribe to the show. Second, make sure you share it with someone you care about, because sharing is caring. And third, head on over to join me in my next free virtual exclusive workshop, where we'll explore proven strategies to boost your business and maximize your potential. Look, it doesn't matter if you're just starting out or if you're looking to take your business to the next level, my workshops are designed for you. So head on over to expertinyouworkshop.com to reserve your spot and get ready to transform your expertise into extraordinary success. I'm looking forward to seeing you there and helping you achieve incredible growth. Until next time, make sure you're always seeking the expert in you, and God bless. Have an amazing day.